Welcome to College MIS Matters, the podcast where we uncover the latest news, insights, and innovations shaping management information systems in further education colleges. Join us as we explore data-driven strategies, tackle key challenges, and share real-world stories to empower MIS professionals like you. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, welcome once again to this week's episode. Today we've got a big talking point news, and also we're going to hand over to Robin Wilson. So first, our news is about the proposed or the planned cut in adult education funding by the DFE, as reported by the FE Week news last week. Then secondly, which is a core part of our podcast, is Robin Wilson is going to give us some tips and some real knowledgeable options to export data from your cloud system and then importing onto your local college database. This is really going to be very useful, and I think it's going to use example from Strata. For those of you that don't have it, or if you're planning to have it, it's good to see all the functionalities that Strata gives you on getting data sets out of the system, and because Strata is a cloud-based system. So thank you very much. So Robin, once again, welcome. Good to have you again, Robin.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So yes, so first we're going to dive deep, look into this news that I came across last week. I think it was the Wednesday or Thursday last week in the FE week, which that would be the 6th or 7th of February, and that the news came up. So the report from the FE week basically says that the FE has informed the mayoral combined authorities, which is the devolved authorities, to anticipate a 2% reduction in their adult skills funding. So this is directly to the devolved. Well, obviously, we know this would obviously have implication on a non-devolved part as well. So that said, they're planning to the 2% reduction in their adult skills and allocations for free courses for job, which is a level 3 provisions for the 2025-26 academic year. This reduction is part of the government's efforts, like we've been hearing so much, of identifying savings for the Treasury, and like we've heard it all over the news in the past few months since the Labour Party came into power. It's estimated that this move will save approximately £30 million. And I think it's unlike schools, the further an adult education budget, it lacks any protection within the DFE. So that means it's susceptible to such cutbacks. Is not a protected budget in a sense. So if we look at the historical context, the Institute for Fiscal Studies highlights that adult education funding rates have remained stagnant for a decade, during which learner numbers have halved. So learner numbers has gone down by 50%. This consistent underfunding has made it particularly challenging to deliver low-level courses as per the per student funding value has eroded over time. Then this is currently had reactions from the sector, and then Sue Pember, policy director at HOLEX, expressed strong disapproval, stating that cutting funding after more than a decade of debilitating budget freezes. In double quote, she says, flies in the face of the change we were promised at the general election. She further described the decision as anti-growth and anti-opportunity. So looking at the broader implication, the reduction in adult education budgets is not an isolated issue. Recent reports indicate that a quarter of leading UK universities are cutting staff due to budget shortfalls, leading to up to 10,000 jobs losses. This trend, underscores the financial strain across the entire education sector. If you look at the importance of adult education, like we know, investing in adult education is crucial not only for economic growth, but also to enable social cohesion. Since substantial cuts were made to the UK adult skills budget, 1 million fewer adults are participating in education and training. 1 million fewer are participating in education and training. This decline has led to reduced productivity. See, that's the thing. It reduced productivity and poorer social integration. Even beyond economic benefits, adult education also narrows the economic disparities. It reduces social fragmentation and fosters inclusivity by integrating, marginalized groups through language and cultural knowledge. I know the government has, had different allocations. We know about free courses for job, which more particularly for 24 years old and above to do certain courses, which was a good move. And also some colleges have the innovation fund, which according to the definition is quite a very useful pot of money. As it says in the ESV website, the purpose of this flexibility is to encourage local innovation and support eligible providers to be able to develop new provision in partnership with local employers and offers. So this is the innovative provision. And like I say, it says you have the flexibility to use all or some of the 3% of your adult skills fund allocation, and you must use this flexibility to fund the development cost of establishing new provision. This includes research and development costs and to support work with large employers and or local small and medium-sized enterprises, which is the SMEs, or micro businesses to scope and develop non-accredited provision bespoke to that employer. It's also it could include project management costs and to support the cost of overseeing the project development and setting up of new non-accredited provision. And it could also cover the staff costs of developing and preparing new qualifications for submission to DFE or awarding bodies approval processes. It also says you could use this innovation fund for training for the trainer. Yeah, so developing training for teaching staff to be able to deliver provision in new and emerging fields such as green skills and artificial intelligence. So clearly, this pots of money. It's really good for the educate for the adult education um, in our country, and that looks like a good move. So it's quite surprising to see the planned cut in free courses for job and also in the adult skills fund general. So Robin, what's your view? What do you think about this news that was reported that FE week last week, as I've just gone through now?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite shocking, really, that with having cuts, I think, when there are cuts by even just standing still because of all the kind of increases in cost for everything, from the electricity to running and heating the colleges,
Mm,
to paying the staff. And then there's a much higher volume, I think, of 16 to 18 students kind of coming into colleges,
mm,
and they need all the money they can get to invest and to ensure that they have everything that's needed for. And obviously, I know this is about adults, but obviously it's
this
just
is more about
cuts
adult
cuts in
education. This the
general,
news,
really.
yeah, the news was
But
particularly was about the cut for adult education. We
into the
don't
adult
know
education, yeah.
what the
But I mean,
16 to 19
cuts
is yet.
cuts at all, and I mean they're trying to needing to bring the money in. And yeah, the number of students that adults that do courses has fallen a lot from what it used to be, and there's a lot less people able to get the funding. And obviously, that's just going to decrease further by these latest cuts. And I mean, having the targeted sort of areas like jobs for funding for jobs, it's helping to get some people into those sort of needed areas, a bit like STEM provision. And I suppose if there's cuts in the funding, it means less people will be able to take advantage of that
Mm,
and get those sort of very sort of core skills that they need in the workplace. So it's bad news, really. It's not a good thing, and it's sort of not expected, really, was it? Because we weren't expecting there
no.
to be cuts. We thought, if anything, there was starting to be glimmer of hope that there was going to be some potential very small increases, but then you end
Mm.
up with another cut.
Yeah, I know. And we're looking at, I know it's funny, a few weeks ago, I read on the news about the need to get more adults into this artificial intelligence, AI, because even personally, like a lot of us, we're focused on educating the younger generation on artificial intelligence using and everything. But what about the adults? you know. So I was actually right about that. That actually that's true. We need to help also equally educate the 19 and above. There's learners 19, 20, 21 that are currently out there, and they also need extra support with education, including this new emerging AI. And then cutting budget is obviously not making this more employable or more to keep on top of this new technology, which would make them work more efficiently, more effectively. So we do really need a focus on adult education, including making sure they have up-to-date knowledge of artificial intelligence. So it's quite surprising, like you said, the cut in these adult skills fund. Well,
It's a
we
good
should
point,
keep.
actually, because it is actually going to become a very core skill. So I mean, I think
Mm,
reading and writing and all of those sorts of skills, and even like time management and stuff, so core skills to do with just everyday life. I mean, I think AI is going to become a bit like computers. It's going to become sort of is it ubiquitous, as in it's in everything. It's in everyday life,
mm,
and there's a need to understand it. And I mean, people growing up with it, I suppose, may be more likely to understand it
mm,
because it's there from early on. But the people who are, the adults, where it's not there, and then a few years later, it's all over the place. They're the
mm,
ones, I suppose, that are really maybe going to feel more lost with all this AI stuff that they've not grown up with. So And I think, yeah, the ones that don't have it may fall. And then as a country, if we're not investing in the adult skills,
Hmm.
if we're waiting for the young people to get to the point where they're running their own businesses and everything, rather than helping the adults, then it's going to mean it's a lot longer before we could become a sort of a leader in the AI. Because
Exactly.
if the adults don't understand it, they're going to be just avoiding it probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah. So as we reflect on this development, it's obviously essential to really, like we said, recognize the key, the real pivotal role adult education plays in our society. And budgetary decisions like this have really far-reaching consequences, impacting not just the individual and seeking to better themselves, but also the broader economic and social fabric of our nation. And like I said, we want to be leaders in all these technology leaders, but this is going to have a big impact. So yeah, we'll keep on top of this as the story unfolds. We're going to monitor and discuss the implications in future episodes. So that's a part of the news, and now we're going to go over to Robin Wilson, looking at this exporting data from your cloud system and a very different and probably more efficient way to import it onto your server or on your database. So yes, so over to you, Robin. Thank you.
Right. Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you, Ben. So yes, I've developed a tool which transfers data between cloud systems and your local databases. So this might be because, for example, if you're using Strata, you can configure some export reports within Strata, because and that's a cloud-based, web-based system which isn't hosted in the college; it's hosted by Strata. I think they host it on Azure. Yeah, it's on Azure. And so you can install a tool they provide on your local server, and what that tool does is it transfers all those export reports you set up within Strata onto your local server in the college. But that creates them as CSV files. So every time you import an ILR file, it'll refresh the CSV files that are stored locally, which have all the retention, achievement, and the qualification achievement rate data in them. But obviously, where you really need that data is in your database, so you can combine it with your other data and other systems to provide the reports and refresh the reports within the college. And you don't want that to be a manual job where you're doing it every night or
Mm,
every morning, where you
yeah.
have to sort of export or so import that data and because it's your first task every morning. I mean, it might be that you only refresh your ILRs every week,
Mhm,
and perhaps it will be a weekly task. But the idea of the tool is you set it up, configure it, and then once it's configured, you forget about it, and then it just runs in the background like every
mm,
other sort of scheduled task. So I've made it as straightforward as possible. So you have command, one exe file which you run via command prompt, and a config file which contains the settings. And there's basically four options: import and export of CSV. So it's from cloud to database for CSV and Excel, and then from database to cloud for CSV and Excel. So there's four different tools really. I thought it was better to make four tools rather than one to keep it simple, because
mhm.
you're only going to want one task to do one of those four things. So that's why I did it that way. So if you want, I'll share my screen. I prepared a quick demo to show you kind of what the tool does
Okay.
and what it might be used for. The other thing that I'm using it for is for the college website, because college websites within colleges are often run externally, and it might be on a Linux server. It might be within the college, but often it's actually hosted by somebody else. So it's in the cloud again, and you have your course information within Pro Solution, EBS Unity, whatever system you're using, and you want to extract that data to the website so you can advertise the courses you're offering for the current or upcoming or both years, so that students can apply for those courses on the website. And you want that to be up to date and kind of refreshed really every night so that as new courses are added, they get marketed. And as courses are maybe taken up, maybe they're full, you don't want more people to be applying for them when they're already full, perhaps. So you
Yeah.
want to maybe either take them off or maybe change the message to maybe an inquire rather than apply. So
Mm.
you might want to refresh that data actually more often than that actually to track those current numbers. So I'll share my screen and I'll give you a
Okay.
quick demo.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've only got the one screen at the moment. Share. So hopefully you can see the screen
Yeah.
and I'll just cancel that. So
Pop up.
I've got a folder here, MIS Matters, and I've just created a strata example here. There's some other examples I was looking at as well, but looking at the strata example, this is a
That's
spreadsheet. Sorry, this is the
okay.
CSV file.
So it
Um,
says that was exported automatically from the back end of Strata.
yeah, so this is a file that you might get from Strata that
Okay.
would if you use their synchronization tool, it'll place that CSV file onto your server or whatever computer you're running the tool on,
Hmm.
and that will put that CSV file. So if you called your export report in Strata ENT by course, the
Hmm.
CSV file would be called ENT by course. And then every time it refreshes, it just replaces that file. So this is an example of that file, for example. You've got retention achievement, learning aim, and national rate, best cases, how many starters there are. And so this is an actual file from Strata. So if you wanted to import this into your system, because I've made this command line based so that you can run it on Task Scheduler within Windows, because that's
Okay.
quite an effective way of running it. But you can also run it obviously on demand. So if I go to the folder where it's stored, so we've got four. So this is a CSV file, and it's
Hmm.
going to be imported. So I want the CSV importer. So that one. And it's version 1.05 at the moment. But people have actually given me some feedback, and I will be producing a 1.06 with some of that feedback incorporated. One of the feedbacks is that you can't specify a schema other than DBO for importing. So I'll make that an option so you can choose a different database schema in case you've got
Hmm.
multiple. Most people just have DBO, but makes it flexible. So
Hmm.
run the file CSV importer, and if I run that, it'll import that file. So it's using the config file, which I prepared earlier, in that folder called appsettings.json. But if you wanted to, you could have different config files. So if you had, say, a different imports from Strata, such as ENT by learning aim, ENT
Hmm.
by course, ENT by enrollment,
Yeah.
then you could have one copy of the exe file, but different config files. And if you wanted to use a different config file, you'd put the name of the exe file, and then a space, and then the name of the config file. So you could have app settings two. You could call it ENT by
Yeah.
course.json. So
Hmm.
make it more obvious what it was which, rather than one, two, and three. So what that's done is that you can see from the output, it says it's not downloading the file to FTP from FTP because it can also take a file from a remote server. So if that CSV file could be on an FTP, and
And
in
you
this
have
case
to.
it's not because Strata copies it to your local computer. But say you
Mm.
had a finance system where maybe it generated the files locally on its own server. So this could connect to the FTP on this
FTP.
on
Yeah.
the finance server and take a copy of the file to its local to here, and then it
Hmm.
could import it into database. So it actually can do the full task of importing. So it's uploaded 740 rows of data into the table, import strata example in the database. So if I go to the database, you see at the moment there's no tables, but if I refresh it, that table should now come in. So that's the table that's been imported in.
Mm.
and that data should match what was in that file. And it's named all the columns the same. And you
Hmm.
can see where it was blank, it's put nulls, so it doesn't just put like a blank text string, which would throw off calculations if you're trying to add these together. It puts nulls where there's a blank. So
Hmm.
it tries to be quite intelligent in its data type conversions to work out what type of data this is. Is it a number? Is it a text string? And so there is the SSIS tool that Microsoft provide, but
Yes,
that's very bad at determining data types and data
yes.
lengths as well. Because you see, if I
That's
look at this,
yeah. That's problem I normally have with the
it's quite fiddly,
exercise.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
So you see this one, it's done in integer, a float, in float. So any
Mm,
percentages, it's gone in as float. Numbers have
mm,
gone in as numbers. And then where it's got, say, hybrid end year has 5 characters. It's done 5. Because what you find is that with the Microsoft tool, it puts everything as varchar 50. And if it's shorter than varchar 50, you're okay, although it's not great for trying to add the values together if they're coming in a string. But then
mhm,
if it's longer than 50, it just fails with a error saying it's truncated and it can't carry on. And
mm.
but this doesn't have that problem, and that was why I created it, because all the hours spent trying to fiddle about with SSIS, when what you're
Yes.
trying to do is really quite simple. You just want, I've got this
Yeah.
data here, I
You
want to
just
put this
want.
data over here, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it keeps going, no, sorry, you can't do
No,
that. There's an error,
yeah.
and then you have to fiddle about with it. I mean, in the Microsoft tool, if you take the longest row and put it at the top of the file, then
Mm.
you can import the file because it just kind of only checks a few rows and then it goes, that'll do. I've checked a few rows.
I
I'm sure
understand.
there won't be any that are longer than this one. And then it just tries to import it and fails. It's really silly, you know. But this checks
Mm.
the entire data set and it goes, what's the longest one you've got? All the learning games obviously are 8 characters, but say
Yes.
you had a course
So,
title,
yeah,
that's going to
that
be a
is.
variable length character string.
Yes.
I mean that shouldn't be over 50 characters possibly. It could be, I suppose.
Uh,
But anyway, so that's imported that data into this table. And you can see the output is on the other, let me just close that, on the other tab here.
mm,
And it's named all the columns as they are in the spreadsheet. So again, it's just in a sort of quite straightforward fashion.
mm,
And then if I was to go back the other way, so if you look at what's in the folder now, we've got a file called strata example, if you can see
mhm.
that on the
Yes.
screen.
Yes. Yes, we can.
You know, actually, if you're just listening to the audio, you have to visualize this because you won't be able to see it. But there's a file called strataexample.csv in the folder, and
Hmm.
I've just imported it into the database, and I've just shown with SQL Management Studio that the data has gone in, and it matches what's in the spreadsheet. So that's taken the spreadsheet, sorry, not spreadsheet, CSV file. That's taken the kind of open it with Excel, so I'm thinking spreadsheet. Yeah, that's imported the CSV into the database. So now we're going to do the reverse, taking
Hmm.
it back out of the database, putting it back into a CSV.
Hmm.
So if I just go up a folder and I go into my CSV exporting tool rather than
Exporter this time.
importing tool,
Mhm.
exporter, the other one, yeah, the other one's importer, and then do CSV exporter, and then run that, then that's then hits the database, loaded the data from the Strata example and put it into a CSV file. And I've called
Mm.
the CSV file Strata example exported. So
Yeah.
you can
So
see that it's not the same,
different.
it's not overwritten
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And you can
Yeah.
see it's actually made it more compressed. It's a little bit smaller. Um, but if you look at the data, you'll see it's the same data.
Okay. That's good.
Don't convert. That's when you asked me about to convert data sets into different types. But I didn't want to convert it, so I said no. And you can see that's the data there, and we've got hang on, so we've got 741, so 740 lines of data because your top one's the header.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if we open up the other one, hopefully we'll find 740 as
This
well.
one. Yeah.
If not, then something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
740, yeah, so it's the
Yeah.
same.
Correct. Yeah. So the
So
same
so that
file
that's
I've
sort of
imported.
demonstrated so you can so this sort of shows you can kind of take the data, put it in, and get it back out again in the same format it was to start with. So really that's the way of testing that the tool works effectively.
Was
Whereas if you try to do this with SQL integration services,
Hmm.
you'd find that when you got the data back, these would probably all be strings. So if
Mm.
you took a spreadsheet that was in the oh sorry a CSV that there was everything had in the right format or an Excel file, and then you imported it in, when you exported it back out again, you might find the data in the wrong. It's all in string format potentially.
Mm.
But I know that's happened to me. Um,
Mm.
but this is kind of all gone in and out in the same way. So that's how it works with CSV. And I won't show you Excel because it's the same, it's exactly the same. But there were four tools, and yeah, the reason for producing these was because I was so sick of having to spend ages, hours fiddling around with SSIS trying to get it to accept a very basic file.
Yeah.
So and then if you basically if you're the what was causing me the most issues was the course a course file for the college website, because some of the descriptions
Very
contained
long.
embedded HTML. So
Oh,
because they had
yes.
HTML within them, and they were quite wordy and descriptive as
Yes.
well, we ended up with thousands of characters of sort of text. And you wanted to delete this, create a new spreadsheet each time, but it was kept resetting the size to 50 characters again, chopping it off. So I just sort of thought this is too unreliable. And we need a more reliable solution that's going to work. And the advantage as well of this tool is if you're basing this off a database view and you want to add a column to the database view, all you do is you go into the view, amend it to add the extra column,
Hello.
and then this tool will automatically pick up any new columns and just include those next time. Whereas if you're using the SSIS Microsoft tool, you'd have to open up Visual Studio, open up the Integration Studio Services project, go to the configuration, refresh the column types, and then you'd have to put all the connection details back in again because they always get cleared, and then you'd have to upload it and test it. And you could you could be on a day just doing that,
Yeah.
because I know how tricky, how fiddly. It's not exactly hard. It's just fiddly,
Yeah.
but
It
it
is
should
very
get rid of
good.
all that frustration. And
Yeah.
so it's worth giving it a go. It's a free tool, and I've made it available on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, I suppose we can share the links to the tool as well
On
on the
YouTube.
video probably.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And so if I just go to my repositories, and then we've got so that I've pinned them at the top. So we've got Excel SQL importer. So that's Excel into database,
Hmm.
CSV SQL import. That's CSV into database. Sorry, there's some other ones here. CSV SQL
Excel
exporter.
exporter.
That's taking it from the database to a CSV.
Hmm.
And then Excel SQL exporter, which takes it to Excel. So the combination of these four tools should do the job. And what I haven't covered actually, lastly, is if you go into the CSV one I just did
Yep.
and look at the config file, you just have
Mm.
to open up the config file and
Oh, yes.
type
Edit.
in what
Yeah.
you want. So we go to the top, you can ignore the logging bit. So this is the database server, which might just be called something like ProDB or DB1,
Yep.
college MIDB, whatever you call your database, which can be an
Mm.
internal name. It doesn't have to be a fully qualified name.
Mm.
And then that's the database we're targeting, which
Mm.
could be Pro Solution Reports.
Yep.
If it's a Pro Solution sort of reporting database, it might be
Hmm.
called College MIS database. It could, wherever you want this table to go, just put the database name in. And then this is the username and the password. You could also use Windows Authentication if you're using a Windows user to run this tool. But you can also embed. I mean, that's more secure, I suppose, in a way, because you aren't embedding the password into the config file. But if
Yeah.
your config file's on a server that's obviously protected and everything, then as long as nobody gets a hold of that, I suppose, and you obviously make it so it's limited and it can only sort of access maybe the database you want it to access. But it would
Hmm.
need obviously permissions to create tables because it's
Yes.
adding a
Yes.
table to it. So table
Mm.
prefix. This bit is to so that when you're importing a table, if you use the tab name of the spreadsheet and it's called sheet one, then you import it, and you forget what it's called, and you can't find it. So I just thought having the option of a prefix is
Yes,
useful because
yes,
then it's going to have
yes.
import underscore name of the
Mhm.
spreadsheet, name of the tab of the spreadsheet,
Yeah,
or name of the CSV file.
yeah.
And
To
then
make.
this is the folder where we're picking the CSV file up from. This is the
Mhm.
name of the file.
Mm.
And then line one contains the headers. If you say false to that, it just goes field one, field two, field three. But
Yeah.
because obviously normally in a CSV file, line one has the names of the columns in, so then it
Mhm.
uses that to name the columns. And then delimiter, by default, it's comma delimited with a
Yeah,
comma between each column.
yeah,
But you could change this and make it tab delimited or
yeah,
pipe delimited, or so it's quite adaptable. And then
yeah.
FTP connection, this is where you can connect to the FTP to upload or download the file. This is the export. This is the importer, sorry. So this is taking, might take a file from a remote location
Mhm.
first, and then it would import it in.
Yeah.
And then you could, I also added an extra tool that a consultant asked me, I was working in the college, if I could add this on so that after the task is finished, it runs a stored procedure in the
Okay.
database, which might be that once this data is put into a table, they then runs a routine to sort of merge that data into Pro Solution or whatever MI system, so that maybe if you're importing, say, stuff from an HR system like iTrent, because
Mm.
that's a cloud-based system and one that you use an FTP to get the data from, you might sort of import the staff data into a new table and then use that to create new users in Pro Solution for anybody that doesn't already exist, for example. So HR would add the stuff into iTrent, and then Pro Solution would create them as stuff in the stuff table in Pro Solution, and also the users table. So that's just an extra feature of the tool. So it can kind of do some extra bits as well. And obviously open to suggestions and any improvements anybody would like to make on things to enhance it further. And somebody has made some improvements 2 days ago. I'm going to do his improvements later this week. And I think I mentioned before that was where if you have a database called import export test, but it's not DBO, it's in a different schema. Because
Mhm.
you can have, because essentially the database is made up of server, schema, and then
Yeah.
database.
Mhm.
But mostly it's just DBO. But again, it's adding an extra feature which can, depending on every college is set up slightly differently. So it makes it more useful and usable within your particular setup.
Mm.
So that's the tools. Hope it's been interesting. And yeah, these tools are available free for anybody to use. You do need the .NET 9 what's it called? The .NET 9 software to be able to run that though. So if I go to I'll just tell you where you get that from. So if we do .NET 9 net I'll just put .NET Core. So go to download .NET. I put .NET Core in there, but that's actually
Yeah.
.NET 9, which
.NET
they've
9.
got
Yeah.
rid of the core bit now. So the one you want is go to all net downloads, .NET 9 downloads, and then you want the desktop runtime.
Which is a bit down on
And
the
if you
page.
don't have it installed, if you run this via the command prompt, like I was doing my demo, it'll tell you that it can't run because the required the requirements aren't met, and
Mm.
then that's why you have to download that. So if you have Windows, most people probably have Windows 64-bit because that's the more general version you would have on your computer. So you want Windows x64.
Yeah.
32-bit's not really that common anymore. Or if you have one of the new Snapdragon processors, that's ARM 64. And actually, this database server is actually running on a Snapdragon processor. It's not officially supported yet, but it runs really well and much better power usage. So I'd recommend Snapdragon processors. And they're going to get more popular, I think, as time goes on, to compete with Intel. And obviously, healthy competition is always a good
Yes,
thing
the
because it
healthier
means
competition.
everybody tries to, improve. So
Yes, yeah.
that's the tool. Any questions, obviously, I can answer them if people wanted to contact me. And yes, feel free to use them. Just go to GitHub, and there's the four links. So if you go to the page for each one, there's a releases section, and you just go to latest here, 1.05, and then you can download again for AMD 64 is Intel or AMD processors, and then ARM 64 is for the Snapdragon ARM processors. So it should work on those two mean it'll work on any it should work on any device that runs Windows.
Mm. That's,
Well, up to date currently supported versions of Windows, that is.
mm,
So that's a tool. Feel free to use. You sort of have to unzip that zip. No, sorry, download the zip file, unzip it, and then open up appsettings.json, put your settings into that, and then you can actually even just click CSV importer, and it'll run. But if you run it via your just by clicking on it, you won't see the output really because it'll just open and close. It does. You can see it briefly, but it comes and goes. But if you
mm.
open command prompt and run it that way, then that's a better way. And the very last thing, you can use Task Scheduler on which is on every version of Windows Server and should be on every version of Windows Client, where you can actually set up a task to run that file every night.
Mm.
So you would just go create task, point that at the exe file, and optionally the JSON file if you don't want to use the default one, if you've got more than one import happening, and then set it away and it just runs every night. And you can see from that if it ends with OXO, it means it's completed without any errors. If it ends with a number that's not zero, then it means that it's run into a problem.
Mm.
So yeah, but that can just run every night, and if once so just set it and forget it really, and then your starter data or whatever will get refreshed on a nightly basis, and then any cloud integration with whatever system it is, in or out, can be set up using the same four tools.
Mm.
So I think that probably covers it. I'll stop sharing now and try to unpin it.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's really very useful, really very useful tool. Like I said, could be used for a lot of says Excel file import with the problems with the data type with SSIS. So what if like what I came across one of the files was there's a notes field, like you said, where it's very wordy. Will the system be able to
Yeah.
cope with that as well? If it's
Yes.
lots of
I mean,
characters, it will cope with that, export everything into the database as well.
yeah. It doesn't chop off the text because the problem you
Okay,
get with SSIS is either it fails and
it
says
fails,
it
yes.
can't because it's too long, or
Mm,
it might import it but chop it off.
yeah.
And yeah, so it said the SSIS will only check a few rows of data to
Mm-hmm.
check the length of the fields, and then it'll just assume that the ones after that are shorter or the same, which is rather an unreliable way to do it.
Mm,
What this tool does is it looks at the entire data set and it looks at what's the longest field value in this particular column, and it sets the field type to be the correct field type, as
mm,
in decimal, integer, a string value, and then if it's a string value, it sets it to be the length of the longest record.
mm.
So it'll never result in a truncation error.
And there won't be any version problem of Maxive Excel, like where you have it must be 97 2003 or the newer version. There won't be an Excel version problem, is there?
No, there's nothing actually. Excel supports. I think I can't. It's either 4,000 or 8,000. I need to double check it, but it supports very very long columns. So there's
Mm,
no reason why SSIS should ever have a problem with truncation. So it'll any modern version of Excel, and
mm,
I think even the 64-bit ones, obviously they have even bigger support for even bigger columns, I believe. But
mm,
even the 32-bit ones, going back years, support. I think it's at least 4,000 characters in a particular column. So there's
mm,
no reason why, yeah, it should have any problem with any data that gets exported to those files, unless it exceeds perhaps the 4,000. It's an older version of Excel, but I think the I think the newer one might be 8,000, but I need to double check it. But I mean, yeah, I think that's going to cater for the majority of use cases. And obviously, if you're exporting to Excel, but you find that it's exceeding the abilities of Excel, then you can export to CS. You can use the CSV option instead, and that's unlimited because CSV, as far as I'm aware, there's no upper limit on a CSV column length.
Yeah, yeah. What actually was about the, like, for example, the rows, the number of rows, because sometimes with CSV, with the version of Excel, there's some limitation of number of rows you
Oh, is
can
it two
have.
million or something? I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
yeah, there is
So
a, I think it
with
cuts
the
off after that, doesn't it?
yes, yes. So and with the Excel 97 2003 or the newer one of the newer version, you need to have a kind of what was it? I can't remember. I think that was one of the problem when you importing into using the import task process. There's sometimes you wouldn't be able to import certain number of rows if you're
The file
using
can exist with more rows,
mm,
but then as soon as you open it with Excel, make a change and save it, I
mm,
think then it only saves the first, I think it's 2 million rows and you lose everything after that. So the
mm,
file can be generated with more than, say, 2 million rows, but as soon as you edit the file and save it, then you lose the data that's after the
mm,
2 million rows. Or is it one? I think it's 2 million. So that is, but then again, CSV is something that is a format that doesn't have that problem. And if you open it with Visual Studio Code, or there's other tools that are good at working with large files, they don't have a problem. Because I mean, there's one file which is all the UK postcodes across the whole of the UK, the full
yeah,
postcode.
yeah,
And there's a file you can download
yes,
from the internet with that, and
and
that
ONS,
exceeds the 2 million.
yeah,
So when you try and work with that file
yeah,
in Excel, you find you just can't really.
yes, that's right, yes, yes,
But the CSV one, you can actually just take a bit of time to open it, but it opens and if you use Visual Studio Code, you can actually open the file in that and you can scroll up and down it. You could add a line, you could save it, and it would remain intact.
mm,
Obviously, if you added anything that would cause the syntax to be wrong, like an extra comma, you'd find then
yeah,
it wouldn't be recognized by the import tool either as a valid CSV file. But yeah, so for the very, very huge files, then CSV is a better option, really, I think. But for the majority of cases, you probably wouldn't have files that exceeded 2 million rows, unless you're dealing with maybe attendance data in a very large college, perhaps over multiple years.
mm,
Um, but then I can't think of any other reason why you'd end up with something so huge, or maybe audit data is the other one. But
mm.
I don't know why you'd be importing and exporting audit data because seems unlikely that you'd be transferring that between systems.
Mm. So yeah, yeah, no, that's right. Also, just on a separate case, in respect to Strata, I mean, we're hoping to have Strata Treble one guess one of these days. And in respect to Strata, what do colleges need? Or for example, those applying to get, how do they get this cloud system to do what you said? Where it's export? What is it through a webhook? Is it through API? What exactly? How do you know how does it work? What is required to get that process in place?
Yeah, so I've got two systems. So starting with Strata, because that's the one we were talking about before.
Mm,
So you would have to log into Strata, which is a website. So it would be usually strata dot the name of the college, no, name of the college dot strata was it .co.uk or I can't remember now the address, but you go to
yeah,
the website, which is where your college's Strata is. You log in with your Active Directory, kind of your Microsoft 365 credentials,
yeah,
like two-factor authentication, etc. And then you go to the reports section in that. And then if you have the permission to get to the export reports section, that's where you set up the reports you want to download to the college on an automated basis. So you can create those reports by dragging the columns in that you would like, similar to what you do with ProAchieve as well. It gives you all the columns that are available on the left. You drag the columns across that you want, or you tick them to say, I want
mm,
this column, and that builds your data set of columns that you want in your file. And then depending what columns you add, that determines the aggregation. So if
mm,
you add the course code, the course title, it'll be summarized at course level. But if you add the learning aim in, it'll be summarized at learning aim level. And as soon as you add the student ID in and the name of the student, it'll be summarized at enrollment level. So you would call it something appropriate, such as if it's the ENT data set, then ENT by enrollment.
Yeah.
and then you would start to provide then a little tool that you download from them and install on your server, which runs
Okay.
as a Windows service, and that's checking all the time for any need to update the files it has. And when it detects a file's been changed, it's actually quite good because you can go into a report in Strata, add a column to it, save it, and it almost triggers that tool seemingly quite quickly to pick up the change, refresh the file. So by the time you go onto the server, it's already got a new CSV file downloaded with the extra column in it. I have found though, if you make a few changes, you change one and then look at it and go, oh, I wanted another column as well. Go back and
Mm.
add another column. It then takes a bit longer the second time
So
to
so
refresh itself.
Strata provide this tool then that
So sorry to provide the tool for that, but if
okay.
it takes a different example, so I know iTrent, the HR system, they have their own reporting platform or tool where
Mm.
you go to their, again, it's an online web-based system, and you create your export report, which you want
Mm.
to export to say, I think it's Excel, add the columns that you want, and you can add calculations as well, such as working out staff utilization figures. Because I've written the staff utilization report in iTrent,
Mm.
in the sort of cloud iTrent system, and then I've configured it at their end to say save this to the export folder, but the export folder is on their cloud computer at the iTrent offices, or it might be Azure, I don't know.
Mm.
So then that file is sitting on their server. So you'd have to then, if you didn't have a tool to do the next bit, you have to get connect to their FTP server, download the file, then import the file to your database, and then do whatever task to refresh perhaps possibly the staffing data. But
Mm.
with the this would be, I suppose, the Excel importer. It could connect to their FTP if you put the username password, if the FTP into it. So it
Yes.
would connect to the iTrent server, the remote server. You get the CSV Excel file, download it locally, and then it would then import that file into the database, and then it can run that store procedure bit at the bottom of the config file to do an additional task as part of this particular script, because basically it's already connected to your database. It has a username and a password, and so it means you can run any store procedure that you give it, as long as it's got permission. The account that you're giving in that config file has to also have permissions to exec, the exec permission. So you can say grant exec to name of the account to give it the permission to run the store procedure after it's after it's refreshed the table.
Mm.
So you can actually do so this is the kind of task you would build an SSIS project in Visual Studio for, but it would be a much bigger undertaking to build that to from nothing, to get it to, as a, because often the other thing with SSIS is it doesn't, it by default it only supports non-secure FTP and non-secure email as well as another one. So if you wanted to email a file to somebody, you can only put a username and a password in, but everything's two-factor authentication these days and things, so that's not possible. And if you wanted to download from an FTP, again, it only supports sort of basic non-encrypted connections. So for all the Microsoft sort of, security first and everything, SSIS has been sort of left and almost forgotten about, I think, because it's not really changed in all the years it's been around. So that's part of the reason why I think it is a bit unreliable and clunky, really, and why we need sort of a simpler solution, which hopefully would save people a lot of time on fiddling about trying to. Because what you have to do is, if you want to download a file from an FTP with
Yes.
SSIS, you have to get SSIS to run WinSCP, the FTP program, so outside of
Yes.
SSIS. So you can WinSCP, you can script it, and then you can get SSIS to run the script. But again, it makes it more complicated and more cumbersome to run that. So this tool kind of does away with all of that. So you can completely, hopefully, it should be it mean you can completely do away with SSIS entirely and just use this as a
Yeah.
much simpler way
Yeah.
of just getting
Exactly.
data from A to B, which is all you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely. I'm definitely gonna have a go at that tomorrow because that
Yeah.
like I say, it looks much easier than SSIS, definitely. So that's really useful too. So I'm
Yeah,
sure all those listening and watching the video would really find this very, very beneficial, which is
yeah. Oh,
all part. Yeah, sorry, yeah,
yeah. So I was going to say, and if you want to make any changes to it, such as maybe to go, oh, actually, we need to include this column as well. We forgot. So, like on Strata, if you wanted to add an extra column in, you just have to go into Strata, open up the export report on
yeah,
Strata, add the column, save
yeah,
it,
maybe
and then the that should refresh quite quickly on the server, and then run the job that imports it, and it'll import with the extra column. No extra work needed on the
that's brilliant.
other than to add the column.
That's brilliant. That's really definitely very brilliant. Yeah, wow, I'm so excited already. I can't
Mhm.
wait to have a go at it tomorrow because I remember I was doing an import for the last week or so and it was so hard. There was a notes column because we use um part of Strata, the forecast where people write notes in there to make
Oh
prediction
yeah.
and the notes people were writing a lot of notes and I just couldn't get that imported onto our database because of the length of the notes. It was so much hard work. I thought, you know what, I can't bother. I just gave up. But this definitely I will be trying this tomorrow. Thank you very
Mm.
much for
That's
this.
okay. Yes, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Because you sort of think it's such a simple thing I'm trying to do. I just want to put these notes from this
And
spreadsheet into the database. Why is it so
exactly.
difficult?
I know exactly. Oh, wow, brilliant. So yeah, so thank you. That is, I'm sure people will come back to us and we'll obviously include the link on the YouTube channel for everybody. And get in touch if there's any question, any like you said, feedback, suggestions, and so that Robin will be able to keep tweaking and building this for each one of us to use free
Yeah,
to
I'll keep
get more
improving it.
yeah, keep improving, yeah, to get even more efficient and serve lots of different purpose and different scenarios, like someone had already mentioned. So that's really great. Um, Brilliant. So I was going to ask you a different question, but I think I have asked question about Strata and getting the data automatically downloaded onto the local drive. So yeah, so, thank you. And I think we'll come to the end of today's session, today's episode. I'm sure you, everybody listening or watching, have really benefited from this video or listening to the audio. And again, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you very much once again. Very, very clever, Robin.
Thank you, Ben.
I find a name. It's not find a name for you now. So thank you very much. That's really very useful. There's
Mm.
other questions that have come on my head, but I think we'll look into it in one of our next episode. We're hoping to have Strata Tribal one advance in our future episode to come and really explain some of their products. So yeah, thank you. And so just want to say goodbye and please remember to follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on the podcast platform so you can get a notification each time and we publish any news. So yes, thank you and thank you Robbie once again.
Thank you, Ben. Speak soon. Bye for now.
Yeah,
Mm.
bye. I forgot to unpin you. So bye
Oh,
everybody and thank you very much for everybody. And so please, like I said, please feel free to follow, subscribe to our channel, and you get notification immediately. We've looked at the news about the planned cut, about planned cut about planned cut. We looked at the planned cut in the adult education budget and where the government sent DFE sent a letter to the devolved authorities about potential 2% cut in the budget. And but then we spoke about it, and we know the adult education. There's been different pot of money, including there's been funding for digital skills to ensure adults have the good level of digital skills, which is normally fully funded, depends on your prior level. And also we have the innovation provision, and that helps to for colleges to develop non-accredited and it also plans for qualifications to be approved. So there's things that's there already, but definitely cutting the budget for adult education, it doesn't match up. And also, as expected, we're not expecting that. So we keep an eye on it, and to hear the latest, I'm sure we'll get more information in March, and also could apply to potential increase or decrease in the 16 to 19 funding. So thank you very much. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.